Well, here we go. This is this is exactly what we didn't want. Another week
Well,
without Phil.
it's also another week that our listeners didn't want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're gonna take a big dip, the viewers, if we keep doing
Oh,
this.
hey, and it's another unexpected discussion that we have to try and navigate through.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
actually this week, in theory, Phil could still appear at
he
at
could.
some moment. He might just be delayed, but we're gonna make a start, and that would be exciting if he did.
Do
But
you find it weird? I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I'm struggling to know how to start these things because I feel like we do need a song, a jingle. You know what I
yes,
mean?
do you know, I was listening to a podcast yesterday, and they had like a whole musical thing.
Ensemble.
Yeah, they had like a song playing, and then it was like one of the guys on the podcast was like, "Welcome to the podcast about this," and
Yeah.
like, and they must play that every week. And in fact, they then later in the podcast had like breaks with the music kicking back in, which
Wow.
I don't know why, because
Breaks.
it was only half an hour long, so I didn't feel like I needed a break, but they
Did
had a
they
little
feel like
musical
people
interlude.
would be bored of them, so they put breaks in?
I do. I mean, maybe, yeah. I think that could be a good thing for us. I think we could cut one another off with music. When, like the Oscars, it's like when
I'm
they're
just
going
going to
on
cut
too
you there,
long.
Luke.
Yeah,
Actually, we're just going to go straight to a coffee
we're
break.
gonna just play the music to keep our listeners interested. Yeah,
Weird
but we
one.
do need a jingle,
Yeah.
and so I think it would be great if someone wrote us a jingle.
Are you launching our first competition?
I am actually, yeah, because yeah, I think we should. We
Right.
don't have the musical ability, do we, to write a jingle?
Me and you?
And
Well, I don't know. I think we could put something together. Me and you?
I mean, we could make an entry for this competition. Let's just hope it's not the only entry, because
Yes.
it would be terrible if another week that Phil wasn't here, we decided to pick a horrible jingle. But
Well, without his guidelines, we're just creating competitions on a whim.
yeah, without the bowling lane side things,
Exactly.
it's just
Exactly.
what it is. Yeah.
Is there a
Well,
prize for this competition?
well, the prize is if you'll get to be the jingle for the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. That's is that good enough?
Probably not,
No.
but
Maybe
there's
we
no
should
budget for this show,
maybe
so
we should give people like not the exact melon used in the escalating Hugo, but
but the same
a
species.
a frown melon.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, that could be a thing.
Signed melon.
Signed melon. Yes.
Signed by the three of
Well,
us.
a sign thing that will go off the
Yeah,
longer you keep it.
yeah. You sell it fast.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go.
Well then,
You're gonna win a signed something, possibly a melon, and
yep.
also your jingle will get to be at the start of the podcast, week to week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So send in your entries to one of us,
Mhm.
um, and yeah, well, I guess like within a couple of weeks, we'll gather them and decide whose is best.
Absolutely. Well, we can maybe do a little bit of a feature to decide and put
Yeah,
some good ones on if there's
yeah, we'll
more
play
than
them
one.
all. So even if you
Yep.
just send one in, you'll definitely get some airtime.
Mhm.
Um, but the best one will get played every week. Oh, I'm excited about that.
Oh
Maybe
yeah. Yeah.
let's say in 2 weeks' time. So
Right. Mm.
first week of March or something. Let's get them in. Does that
Yep.
give people long enough?
I
Yeah.
hope so. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know the kind of level of editing that people will do. It depends on, I guess if we get an email from someone saying, I need more time.
Yeah, that's all
we
right. Yeah,
would-
I haven't managed to get my orchestra together socially distanced,
yeah.
so I need more time. That's all right. We'll
Yeah.
give you a bit more time. So let
Yeah.
us know if you want more time, because we have no idea how long it takes to write a jingle. It should be about 10 seconds long at the most. It doesn't want to be long, does it?
Do you think that your wife will perhaps enter this competition?
100% she will.
Right.
Obviously, she wrote the little escalating Hugo
Yeah.
thing, which was actually quite good, to be fair.
Very
So
good. I think it was the best part of it.
yeah, yeah. No, it wasn't, but she
Well, it was
will.
just a
She
guy
will.
putting
She will.
fruit outside a guy's door.
I know it was so surreal. It was so great, wasn't it? But that comes up a lot in staff meetings, doesn't it now?
What fruit?
Just fruits,
Yeah.
dropping things at Hugo's door.
It
Yeah.
really scarred. It got into a place. I didn't know that fruit could be so scary for Hugo.
Yeah, it really did kind of get into his psyche and
Yeah.
mess with his mind a bit, which was exactly the point, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was exactly
So
right.
it worked
Yeah.
very well, actually.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He was a bit freaked out by it,
Yeah.
but
No.
yeah, she'll definitely send in an entry, and so we'll see. But there'll be no bias here. Don't worry about
Uh, no, don't worry about it. And
that.
we're not gonna independently adjudicate the entries, are we? So,
Yeah.
do I have to worry about that?
No, I don't think so. Um, I was watching a funny video this morning, which was
Right.
it was like actors telling this guy, the interviewer, the best thing they'd stolen from like a set of a movie they'd done.
Right, okay.
So it's pretty good, but it's amazing the things they end up with. Like Star Wars characters have all taken home a lightsaber or whatever,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
which would be so cool.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise has basically got, I don't know where he stores them all, but he takes like vehicles home and stuff. He often does like action movies, so he's got like motorbikes and that kind of thing.
I mean, that just sounds like sort of Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, yeah,
You know what I
yeah.
mean?
He's just stealing
Yeah,
cars.
he's just stealing cars.
Yeah, yeah.
It
He
was on a
gets away with
set,
it. Yeah,
honestly. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But that got me thinking about what thing would you like to steal from a movie set if you could? What would it be? Remember, you then have to store it or put it somewhere. So the Death
Like,
Star is not going to be that helpful.
yeah. Hard to move the Death Star, isn't it? On your
Exactly,
own.
and it will be obvious that you nicked it as well. If you try and keep it a bit on the sly,
Yeah, that's true.
something more
And
subtle.
you'd need a very good team to move it.
Yeah, you would. You'd need I can't remember what they're called now. The guys who are with Luke Skywalker, the rebellion, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And a good manual.
But actually, they wouldn't help you move it. They'd be like, "No, we want to destroy it."
Yeah,
So.
I mean, I guess
Anything come to mind?
weirdly, yes.
Mm.
Weirdly, yes. Very quickly. Now, this is a bit strange because it probably goes against the advice that we just talked about with the Death Star. It's not the Death Star. It is. I was thinking about the friend's house. The house like Monica and Rachel's house.
Oh wow, yeah.
But that is literally just moving in to the house.
But that would be cool though.
Yeah.
Which
Imagine living on the set of Friends. Like that
Yeah.
was your house.
Would you not want? You'd want the house to actually be both of the flats.
Yes.
So like
that's
you'd
true.
kind of come in the front door maybe, and you've got their hallway where they've got
Yeah.
door on either side. So maybe your front door brings you into the hallway,
Yeah.
and then you can pick. It's like, do I fancy going to Joey's,
Yeah.
for some
Yeah.
food, or should I go into the big flat and I don't know, chill out there?
Yeah. If my
With-
life ever got to that level,
Yeah.
please get me help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, if anyone could make that a reality with you and Maya's skills of decorating, like you could probably fashion something like that. Actually, I would
Isn't
be
there-
worried about you, but
Yeah, well, I'd be worried about myself, I think. But there's quite a thing now where I've seen on the news where dads have made kind of part of sets in their home for their kids.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
yeah,
I think there was a guy who did part of Harry Potter. What's that alleyway called? Valley or whatever.
Diagon Alley,
Yeah, alleyway.
the alleyway,
the back lane.
the magic alleyway.
Yeah. With the bins out.
Yeah,
Yeah, and he sort of did it. It was really, really cool. It was kind of small,
yeah.
but he kind of on the way to get to her bedroom, which probably was cool for a day, and then was really annoying after that.
Yeah, and like, how did he make it? Like, what was it made out of?
I don't know. Paper mache?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was wondering. I think my dad made us a paper mache Tracy Island, Thunderbirds. And that was really cool. And obviously that's like a manageable size. It's just you get it out when you want to play and then you can stick it away again because it wasn't too huge. But turning your whole house into something is pretty.
So did your dad literally watch Blue Peter and then make the Tracy Island?
I
He
don't
must have
know.
been well into his 30s.
Do you know
40s
what?
when he did that.
We've been waiting for a reason to get PP on the show, haven't we? Maybe this is the reason.
Explain
him
your
about
Tracy Island, yeah.
paper mache.
Yeah.
PP's paper mache.
But that, I mean, PP's, I wouldn't want to talk against that. It is basically just a mound.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's just different size mound, and then obviously there's a bit which isn't a mound, which is the pool. From what I remember, which it was all painted, so that's a bit of a job. But yeah, exactly, yeah. So I mean, to be fair, that's a kind of paper mache I could do as well. So maybe I should.
Yeah. I feel like what they did with that thing. The fast forward of Tracy Island into Teletubbies because it's basically the same mold shape. And the creators of the Teletubbies went, you know what? Let's just keep that shape and put weird people in costumes.
Yeah, and I don't remember that sun being in Thunderbirds. You know, the baby face sun.
Oh yeah,
that would be weird if that was in Thunderbirds, wouldn't it? You know, on a big dramatic rescue, and then you just kind of this baby is in the sky.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but at least you know the end of the episode's happening because you got that weird thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I tell you what, Nunu was one of my favorite TV show characters. He was the Hoover in Teletubbies.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? And he used to
remember him. Yeah.
Do kind of laps, and I just thought he was great because he made a cool noise. Like,
yeah. He was always cleaning him, wasn't he?
Yeah, fair play to him. Knew what his job was, and he got on with it.
Didn't they always had a heavy toast addiction, Teletubbies, didn't they?
Yes, I forgot about that.
Oh, they were massive into the toast.
Yeah, it was toast. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Teletoast.
Teletoast. Oh wow, yeah. I used to my favorite bit was always, they had TVs on their bellies.
Yeah, again.
I just thought like
hazard.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, they couldn't go anywhere near water, could they? But I thought, like, obviously I got 3 brothers, so there's 4 of us, a bit like the Teletubbies. Like, if we all had a TV on our bellies, that'd be quite cool, wouldn't it? Just about right. Who are we going to watch today? And then you kind of switch them on. Because obviously, if you're the one with the TV on your belly, it's not actually great for watching.
But also, it's sort of the biggest belly is the most helpful.
Yeah. Well, I'm not making any comments on that. All I'd say is we'd never be watching Johnny. Yeah. If you want a widescreen, you're not watching Johnny.
Yeah. If you want a cinematic thing on the TV, you don't go Johnny, do you? But yeah. Well, no, that is very strange.
Where did we get this from? Do you know what I wanted to ask you about? If you lived in Friends, basically, which character do you think you'd turn into?
Turn into?
Yeah, like which one would you most be like?
I kind of think Joey.
Yeah.
Because he's not maybe the most intelligent on the surface.
Yeah.
But he's just a bit crazy and random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can see that for you. Yeah. Maybe a mix of him and Chandler for you. Because Chandler with his kind of wisecracks.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. What about you?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. I feel like if I actually lived on the set, maybe I would just go a bit crazy. And Phoebe's the craziest, isn't she? So
totally.
Maybe I'll just turn into a bit of a Phoebe.
So you're projecting, you say you would sort of live out your craziest moments if you lived on the set?
I think so. Well, you'd be pretty bonkers, wouldn't you, if you'd actually lived on the Friends set? But I mean, I don't know. I mean, my favorite character, this is not necessarily who I'd be, but Ross is my favorite character. I just find him so funny. But I wouldn't want to be Ross. He's like, all the worst things happen to him, don't they? And he's
he's always the victim.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, which is why he's so funny. But anyway. So you would take the whole Friends set, to go back to our original question?
Yeah, which is a tough moving day, isn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would, if I would try to steal the Friends set, which is I should have gone for something smaller. That's lightsabers are manageable. You'd get that out in your coat, wouldn't you? But
exactly, you could take that around with you.
Yeah, that's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
What about you?
A lightsaber is pretty cool, isn't it? But lightsaber is really cool. I mean, my favorite movie is Inception.
And so Leonardo DiCaprio?
Yes, just take him. Just have him like in a box, a see-through box.
I mean, please steal him.
So I was trying to think of something from that, but there wasn't anything that came to mind. They have these little totems that they. He's got that spinning thing.
Yeah,
that might be quite cool. And I could just sit and kind of spin that. Like that would be very manageable.
The end of the movie, wouldn't you?
Yeah, like over and over again. But that would be very easy to steal. So if it really was like you had to actually take it, you just kind of nip in, take it. But I'd have to think about it for other things. It's just, I'll have to think about that.
Yeah.
Someone will come to me later.
I mean, on the Star Wars theme, the other end of the spectrum would be those guns, the what you call them.
Ah, yeah, I do.
You know
Yeah,
what I
they're
mean?
great. The little kind of laser guns.
But you would probably have to do your own noise.
I know that would be the sad thing because the noise is what makes it good. To be honest, it's a bit like that with the lightsabers. The noise is what makes them so cool, that kind of
Yeah.
humming. Oh, I feel like. To be
I
honest,
think
speaking of Thunderbirds, I do love the Thunderbird kind of vehicles.
which is
But
your favorite Thunderbird? Here.
oh, I think 2 was my favorite.
Is that the
The
green one?
Yeah, the green one that
Oh,
could
that
fit
was yeah.
things in his belly.
That was practical, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was
But
great.
the worst thing about that, the figurine of that, if you had those figures growing up, was that the catches always used to fail.
Mm.
So you'd clip him in, and then they'd like constantly drop his belly as you put him.
Yes, yeah, Oz did that as well.
Yeah. So then
Yeah,
what happens is eventually all the kids lost the belly of the green one. So
yeah,
it was just the empty one flying around.
yeah, and it looks pretty
That's,
rubbish when it's like that, doesn't it? It's just a big space in the middle.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was was there an underwater Thunderbirds?
I loved the underwater one. That was number
Oh,
4,
dude.
the yellow submarine.
Yeah. And everyone thought was it the Space Center? Was that the 5th one?
Oh yeah.
No one liked that.
As if they actually just sent one of them up there for like months at a time.
Just the one they didn't like, didn't they?
I know. Can you imagine? I think that was like their dad's version of like the naughty step, right?
The naughty space.
You're going to Thunderbird 5,
Yeah.
so you can think about what you've done, and you can come back in several months.
The naughty space is space.
It's actual space.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then they'd have a little call with him on essentially a Zoom call with him, I guess.
Yeah.
And then that'll be that, and I guess then he's just by himself again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Constantly.
The
You'd have a really good vending machine, wouldn't you?
there's a spin-off show of Thunderbirds, I think, to be written about kind of the therapy for those boys and.
Oh yeah.
I think we could, how they were mistreated by their dad, really. But
it's gone a bit dark now.
well, yeah. I mean, then it'd just be like, well, he never sent Brains up to there, did he? Brains, the favorite.
Yeah.
He was great.
Hold on a second. This is where what's her face? Penelope, the butler. She was in
She was in
Yeah.
Thunderbirds, yeah.
She was just driven around a lot, wasn't she?
She was, yeah, by Parker.
Yeah. Is that where you got your name from?
I'd like to think so. Yes, milady. He was great. They were a good duo.
If anyone's actually listening to this, I just want to apologize to you for this episode.
This is why we need musical interludes.
This is as low as it's got.
Yeah, really. It really has. We should have. We'll stick some music in there somewhere to keep you interested.
We need to. We'll take a coffee break now.
Yeah, take a break. Okay, let's imagine we've taken a break.
But thinking of stealing assets, you are. Hold on.
Well, we're stealing a house next week. Yeah.
At least you're telling people about it, though.
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna come out about it. Yeah, we're stealing a house next week. We're moving house next Friday. We'll get the keys, so we will have all moved in by next Sunday, the 28th, which is good. Yeah, it's really exciting. We're finally getting moved. Moving to West Denton, which is just like west of the A1. If you don't know,
west of Denton, isn't it?
Just west of Denton. It's a confusing place because there's West Denton, but then part of West Denton is called East Denton.
Is there a Denton?
There's a Denton Burn, but that's south. So that's one of the many mysteries I'm looking forward to solving when I move there. It's like, is this West Denton, East Denton, Denton? So I hope I'll find that out.
It sort of reminds me, this is a bit strange, isn't it? But of Kanye West.
Yes.
Called their daughter North.
Yeah, that's cruel, really, isn't it?
I mean, I don't know if they've called the other one Southwest or Southeast.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Southwest. Yeah, no, and that is just. It's not even that funny of a joke in the first place, but it certainly isn't a joke that keeps on giving.
No. But would you? So, is your house northwest, Denton?
Yeah, it is kind of in the middle. So, West Denton's kind of like boxed in by 4 roads, which if you look on a map, they're quite obvious because they're like quite major roads. And our house is essentially pretty central within that box, and that's just kind of a whole residential area. So on the main roads is where you get kind of shops and that kind of thing. Right. And then within the residential area, there's a few takeaways, but other than that, it's pretty much just all housing. And a good mixture of housing. Like there's a lot of kind of still social housing. Some of it's like formerly council owned, and people have bought their houses off them, and so it'll be a nice mix when we move there of people, which is gonna be good. Like I'm looking forward to living next to loads of Geordies, which would be good.
But hold on a second. Go
on.
Why are you moving there, Luke?
That is a good question. Why? Yeah. Well, this is like a journey, if you like. We've been on for a long time. So we've wanted to move into a working class area for a long time and get involved in a ministry there. The reason being that actually when you look at churches in the whole country, actually, the working class are probably the least well-served people group, potentially, other than a few kind of some ethnic minorities, of course, as well. But actually, like white working class communities, which still exist a lot around, especially the Northeast, are really badly served by churches. And I mean, sadly, it feels like one of the impacts of COVID is going to be to make that worse, because there are churches that are going to struggle to kind of pay their way, and they'll be typically in those kind of communities as well. So they'll be the ones that close first, whereas the kind of city centre or in more affluent areas, they'll kind of keep going. So again, I think the situation is only going to get worse for the kind of working class of the UK. So we really wanted to see more ministries happening in those areas, and we do know of lots of people who are doing it, but we recognise that in Newcastle there's not many people, and so we don't feel particularly well skilled or gifted to reach working class people. There's nothing about us that makes us particularly good. So, you know, although both of us have lived in more working class areas in our lives, neither me or Fiona are particularly working class. So it's not like it's a natural place for us to be, but no one else is going, so we wanted to go.
But it's not just so class is a bit of a loaded discussion.
It is, yeah, and I'd hesitate to use working class, but it kind of catches something of what we're talking about.
I guess people understand or have an idea of what that means when you say working class, but perhaps another way of thinking about it is actually like an unreached people group.
Yeah, that's a really helpful way, actually, and maybe that's a better definition, because that is what this group of people is like, not just in West Denton, but across the country.
And essentially, it's instead of talking about class, which is quite a loaded historical debate, it actually becomes about how to engage with difference. Just essentially what it is, isn't it? Just how do you reach people who are historically different, educationally different, work background, professionally different, perhaps.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Yeah, it's about kind of crossing boundaries and barriers that are up culturally, mainly. I mean, it's like, you know, we send out missionaries to places that are completely different, and that is actually something like what we'll be doing. Like you say, there's big differences to overcome, and that's kind of going to be a big challenge. But the only way to overcome those barriers is to live.
So what do you think? Okay, we're getting into something here. What do you think the biggest challenges will be?
I think from what I know of West Denton and communities that's similar, they're quite, although people are very friendly, they can also be quite kind of closed and a bit suspicious, because there's much more likely you're going to meet people who's, you know, they've lived in their house for 3 generations, and like that house has been in their family for however long, and much less movement in and out of the area. And that just means that when someone does move into the area, it's like, well, what are these guys doing? Like, they
skepticism.
Yeah, I think so. And then there will be, I think, like you say, kind of difference will be different to people, and that's always can be difficult to start relationships. And of course, we're coming into a community where most people will have a network and will have friendships. So actually, kind of becoming friends with people might be tricky, because they don't feel like, why would I befriend these new guys when I've got my kind of family and friends around me anyway. So I think that'll be a real challenge, is to just kind of get into people's lives and get to meet them and get to know them well.
So what do you think the antidote to those things are?
Patience, I think, is probably the key thing. That's what we keep talk about that a lot in our little team that we've got who are moving as well.
Like a long-termness.
Yeah, there's a long-term nature to it, and a patience in terms of like we're not gonna be able to go in and start a Sunday gathering and expect church to just suddenly kind of grow from the 11 of us to 20, 30, 40 people. Like it's going to be a long-term ministry. So it's patience in terms of knowing that it's a very long-term thing, but also patience in terms of how it might move slowly. And actually it's going to, things take, relationships take a long time to build properly at the best of times, but when there's big differences between you, or when people are slightly suspicious, I guess, or whatever, it's only going to elongate the process. So those would be big challenges, I think. And then I guess from a more kind of in terms of kind of how you share the gospel, I think it's a big challenge there as well, because there'll be different narratives of people's lives that I think we'll have to get into and get used to and speak the gospel into. They'll have different fears, different desires, different cares, different struggles, and I think that'll take some getting used to, and actually how you then speak the message of Jesus into that will be different to the way that we speak to people where we live now in South Gosforth and in Heaton and that kind of thing.
Do you think there's going to be a different kind of heat for the team going there, and different kind of things that they might not have experienced perhaps in the same kind of way or amount that will be unique to West Endon?
I'm sure there will be, and if we had this conversation in a few months' time, I might be able to be more specific about what those points of heat are. But I do think it's a different culture, so people value different things. I think that might be just kind of a point of kind of heat. I think the way people live their lives is a bit different from our experience. So, at Christchurch, we're really good at being in and out of people's houses and having dinner. And, we wouldn't call them dinner parties, but that's essentially what they are when you have a few people around for a dinner. And that's going to be very different culture. So actually that might be a bit of a big change for us, is we can't expect people to put them in the diary for 3 weeks' time for a Thursday evening. Instead, much more likely, hopefully, is that we'll just pop over for a cup of tea in the middle of the day, and it'll be much more like impromptu. I think that's one of the things, is the kind of structure of our lives is probably going to be quite different. I'd imagine that.
And on that, I guess this is kind of a mission type thinking or theology. You're not necessarily going into this area to change culture. You're going into the area to let God change hearts.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's that's really helpful, is that it's good to think about what in a culture needs to be challenged, and what in a culture actually is just culture, and it's just different. Yes. And I think that'll be something that we've tried to think about, but we'll think about more once we live there, is kind of, okay, what parts of this culture actually do need to be challenged? Like, what is sinful? Just like in our current culture, there are things that need to be challenged. So whilst in our current culture, something that you might want to challenge is, people work too much and it becomes a bit of an idol. Maybe that's something you want to challenge. Yeah. In West Endon, that might not be at all something. It might be people, I don't know, spend too much time at the pub, I don't know. But and that's something you say, okay, yeah, maybe that's something you want to challenge. But there are other parts of that culture, the culture that we have now, that we live in, but also where we're going to live, that will just be different. Like, it's just, and that's just okay, and that's fine. And I think the challenge is sometimes that we want to challenge parts of culture that they're just culture. Like, they're not there to be challenged. And I think that'll be something really important, to not kind of go in and be like, we're basically trying to change a culture into what we're used to. Because
I find this doing missionary quite early on in my life, I guess, that when you have a cultural faith, it gets challenged when you're in different cultures, and it exposes what is built up on repetition and tradition, I guess, and sort of a reinforced cultural way of thinking, rather than actually deep faith that can survive anywhere in the country or world, and how to differentiate aspects of culture that are kind of stuck to sin. Because sin is actually, if you like, independent of culture, because it happens worldwide. And just like the gospel transcends culture, it sits above culture. So it's quite, when you get culture shock, what's being exposed in you is just the in some sense, is the sort of peace and tranquility, or kind of the kind of, if you like, the weight you've put on living your life a certain way. And when that gets disrupted, you get a bit kind of, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do. This feels uncomfortable. And that's very, very interesting. When you feel that, you're like, what am I feeling, and why am I feeling this?
Yeah, and I think the best thing to do is to introspect at that point. So think about, why am I feeling this before? Because what we might immediately want to do is like, well, this is wrong. The thing outside of me is wrong, and so maybe that needs changing. And actually, you want to go, no, why is it that I'm clinging so much to the way that church happened over here, when there's nothing wrong with this, for example. Yeah, I mean, what was you got any examples of kind of where you went into a culture and just kind of that happened, where you kind of, you're like, whoa, this is so different, and maybe you either responded badly and you were like, oh, they shouldn't do that, or
well, I can remember how it felt being 18 and seeing so the first country I went away, I did some training in South Africa, and then we went to Madagascar. So I remember going from kind of a mixed culture in South Africa, where it's sort of a collision of East and West. And that's, South Africa has a lot of poverty, but also development as well. But then going to, so that was kind of like a phase, coming from me, Ireland, did some training in Holland, South Africa. I was kind of eased into it, which I was really happy, because I'd never witnessed, and I'd done some other things, like I'd been to Romania and witnessed poverty, but I'd never actually seen real global poverty, like African poverty, like Madagascar. And I went off the ship I was actually one of the first people in my cohort, my introduction team, to go off the ship for a week and a bit, to go inland and do some evangelism in a city. So I remember kind of just being completely confronted with something that my eyes had never seen and I'd never really felt before. And I remember feeling really unsettled. Even just culturally, I didn't really even know how to react as a Christian, and being broken by something. It's kind of like when you see a homeless person, you have that, I don't know if you have this, I assume other people will, but just like, you just have a natural brokenness for someone who'd be in that position. You're just like, why on earth is this happening? This is wrong. You want to do something, you want to get in there. And obviously it's very complex and complicated. Well, if you times that by like a couple 100,000 and you see it, you're just shocked. So I'm answering your question because I remember that as a kind of, whoa, there's so much in this world that I haven't appreciated before, and kind of engaged with on a heart level, and understood even theologically. I didn't even know how to kind of react and think. And maybe that's an example of, there is this moment when you're just in a new, for you and the people who are moving to West End, and newness and stepping out of a comfort zone, I guess, stepping out of a cultural zone where you've been there for years, you've done what you've done, you understand it, you've kind of subtly engaged with it theologically, you've lived in it, you enjoy it, you're comfortable there. When you step out of those spaces, it's really, really unsettling. And it's kind of like, really kind of like, oh, what do I do? What do I think about this? So I remember that very, very clearly, and just having a real like moment.
You mentioned there kind of like, almost like you didn't know how to theologically deal with it. Yeah. That's just quite helpful. I'm just wondering about whether we have any principles of how we do deal with that. So like what is in our minds from the Bible theologically when we're entering a new culture, or when we're analyzing a new culture. I mean, one thing that springs to mind is just, you mentioned it before, just kind of sin is everywhere. And so that's a helpful thing to have in mind. So sin is, wherever we go in culture, we're going to see sin, even in the culture that we value the highest. But then we're also, I guess the flip side of that is, we're also in every culture, we're going to see God's image bearers producing good things. And I think in every culture that would be true. Like any big culture of a city or a place, you'll see God being reflected in the way they live, and that's another helpful principle, I guess. So there's two starting points. I don't know if anything else comes to mind for you.
Another principle I think is that godliness or gospel heartedness doesn't look like me in terms of I have an idea of what a Christian looks like.
Yes.
Actually, that's very different in different cultures. So the person who dresses and does this type of thing is not what I'm aiming for in my mission. I'm aiming for gospel heart change, which actually looks very different across the world. Godliness looks very different in West Denton and all these different places. So I'm not, my mission or mission in general, the gospel is not trying to make a person like me. Or my background or how I dress or it's to point them to Jesus and have that heart change.
That's so powerful, isn't it? And I think that's one of the wonderful things about the Bible. And actually it's one of those little things that just makes me believe it more, is just that it doesn't impose a culture onto a place. So actually, like, as church kind of goes into a new area and a new culture, what happens is that culture is redeemed and kind of transformed, but it's not extinguished and it's not completely changed. Like, what are we called to be? If you think of the fruit of the Spirit, it's like to be, to love, gentleness, self-control, faithfulness, those kind of things. They're not things that need to necessarily change a culture. You can be them, whatever you're wearing. You can be them. It's kind of that's very powerful, isn't it?
Very powerful. And Galatians says that there's no law for these things.
Yes, yeah.
It transcends a legal structure.
Yeah.
A judicial system. Its kindness is non-cultural.
Yeah. And then another kind of, I'm not sure if this is a principle or what, but this was doing the biblical counseling course last term, and one of the things David Powelson really talks about is kind of how the culture is. You don't kind of underplay how powerful a culture is. Yeah. So like the world that you've swum in for your whole life is going to have kind of, if it takes someone who's like converted in a culture, they're going to have that kind of culture in them. And just when you're discipling people, I guess, you need to have that in mind and be kind and patient towards that. So it is kind of linked to your point of not expecting a certain kind of Christian, but I guess my point is more the kind of patience on certain things, which will be hard for them to change. Like if they've lived their whole life and what they've seen is that the way to deal with a situation is to respond in anger, for example, then it's going to be really hard for them to then grow in patience and not just get angry because they've had it modeled to them their whole life by their family maybe or their culture. You see what I mean? So it's kind of like, it's also showing how sanctification is going to be different or difficult in a culture, depending on where you are as well. I think.
And then the flip side of that is another principle perhaps is conversion is different if it's difficult, because sin, that you talked about this magnetizing effect of culture and drawing you in and keeping you there and then reinforcing. So that's so actually from a non-Christian perspective, it's what we're the gospel is not what we're saying. The gospel is not a culture shock for them in the sense that it's above culture, but actually sometimes it can feel like they're stepping into they're stepping into completely new life. So there's a confrontation there to actually expose what non-Christians do have is this magnetism effect of culture and their sinfulness, and it's hard to differentiate that. So you get that the challenge of the culture and sanctification that you just said, but also from a non-Christian's perspective, you get that real like, hold on a second here, I'm not going to accept this because it's so radically different to everything I've ever known and acted, and there's a tradition, sin is traditional actually in a way. I didn't mean that to be as controversial as it sounded, but there's a in your sinfulness, you walk along and you compact it in your life almost.
Yeah, it becomes a norm, and it becomes so, becomes respected and that kind of thing. That does play into it, doesn't it? Yeah. And I think I mean, just this conversation has been really helpful for me in terms of moving to West Denton, thinking actually, what are the great things about the new place we're going to live, and that's important to remember, because it isn't just about challenging culture. It's actually also about celebrating what's good about it, and it's so yeah. I mean, this has been really helpful, but trying to think about a kind of passage to land on, but the thing that often I think of when we kind of talk about going into a new culture is when Paul does that, and where is it that he goes and he sees all the idols and the gods around the city?
Athens, isn't it?
Is it Athens? Yeah. And you know what's his response? It isn't, oh, can't believe they've got all these idols. Like, his response is, I'm going to go and preach the gospel to these guys. And actually, he does it in a very warm way, really, because he actually says, like, look, I can see that you're religious. He kind of, I don't know, his first step actually is to move towards them before then challenging. I just find that's quite a helpful model in some ways of when we go into a new place. Like look for the gods, but also look for the good.
And he also redirects something that isn't necessarily bad, but it's just pointing in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
So he says, I can see that you're very committed, almost, religious, but you're just looking at you just don't know where to look. And then he actually brings them to Jesus. And it's this unknown God, there's this idol to an unknown God. And I guess one of the key things in West Denton will be to identify what people are looking at. And then, pastorally kind of engage with them and say, well, let me give you a better vision, because actually what you're looking at is not going to give you what you hope, which is confrontational and disturbing for people.
Yeah.
But also what you're offering them is, well, hope of the gospel. Let's look at something that will deliver.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's good mission, isn't it? When you kind of engage with your culture in a way to actually understand what are their gods.
Yeah, and exactly. And to do that, you have to get to know people really well, and not be some kind of, I don't know, like outsider who just wants to come in and preach at people. You've got to get to know them and work out what those storylines are, like you've been saying, of what are those things that they look for, and then actually offer them something better. Like, that's what it's about, isn't it? So that's why we're going. To wrap this up, that's why we want to go. We want to get to know people so that we can do that. And in some ways, what's exciting about this is, it's the same kind of mission that we all try and do, hopefully, is that that's what we're all trying to do as Christians anyway. The difference is we're doing it in a new place that we don't know as well, and it'll take us time, but it's exciting. We should pick this up again in a few months once I know more about West Denton and what all the takeaways are like and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. I'm excited for many reasons, but one of the reasons that I'm excited for is to actually be challenged about the things that we don't see currently now in our own culture here in Christchurch, Newcastle, which of course is a much broader. People live in lots of different places, but when you have those culture shocks, you actually learn quite a lot of really great stuff that needs to be told. And we need to be reminded, oh, by the way, that you're just doing this and you haven't thought about it. That is going to help us a lot. And also be something that we want to do more. We want to replicate this kind of thinking, don't we?
Well, exactly. Yeah. We want to, let's hope, God willing, this isn't the last time that people from Christchurch move into a new area. We've been talking about reaching new cultures and new areas, and that's exactly what we want to do is at Christchurch and partnering with people outside of Christchurch. I mean, you just look at our city, don't you? And there's so many places that we could have went to, and actually, hilariously, we did have a massive list of places that we looked at, and we could have went to pretty much all of them, because there aren't Christians there aren't churches there. We need more people to go out and cross those boundaries. Go on.
And I was going to say that's our prayer, isn't it? As a church, that we're praying for people. I mean, it could be one person, but one person could just say, have a real heart for this, almost like, old school missionary thinking. Have a real heart for the unreached people group in, I don't know, Blythe or not even a people group in living in a specific place. And if we're to pray for more missionaries in Newcastle, we should see more churches. and people reached. And that's an exciting thought when we pray for us to have hearts like that in Christchurch, to kind of go, actually, we want to go and tell people about Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to get comfortable. We want to keep going out. Yeah, and that's like you say, that's what Christchurch is praying and working towards. So, be exciting to see how God uses that in the future.
Definitely.
I think we should wrap up, but this has been really great. Despite not having Phil. So thanks very much, Rick. And well, next week we've got a special with Lydia Hines, and we'll be talking about her kind of specialism, I suppose, of kind of hospitality and around that. And so it might just be us two again, but we will have Lydia along, so that'll make it. That'll be good.
Plus, we will have some feedback on our theme tunes.
Oh, I hope so. I hope we've got at least one entry by then.
Oh,
I hope so.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Cool.
Grand. Cheers, Rick.
Bye.